Good day, everyone. I'm Feljean Bagos, and I was assigned to report the Section 1 of Module 2 that tackled about the global economy. What is globalization? Based on Steggers, globalization is the expansion and intensification of social relations and consciousness across world time, and space implies that there are various forms of connectivity. Globalization is the multidimensional phenomenon, creating economic, political, cultural, and even technological forms of connectivity. Economic globalization refers to the expanding interdependence of world economies. Shang Quan attributes this to the growing scales of cross-border trade commodities and services, flow of international capital, and wide and rapid spread of technology. In the Philippines, cross-border trading can be best illustrated by the country's trading partnership with China, the United States, and Australia. Moreover, the flow of international capital can be observed in foreign direct investment or FDI, a type of investment in which a company establishes a business in another country for production of goods or services and still takes part in the management of that business. A good example of this is Toyota Motor Philippines Corporation, which is subsidiary of Toyota Motor Corporation based in Toyota, Japan. This flow of international capital can also be observed in the foreign portfolio investments, trade flows, external assistance, and external commercial borrowings and private loan flows. In 2008, the International Monetary Fund or IMF defined economic globalization as a historical process, the result of human innovation and technological progress. It refers to the increasing integration of economies around the world, particularly through the movement of goods, services, and capital across borders. Benzes identify four interconnected dimensions of economy, namely globalization of trade of goods and services, globalization of financial and capital markets, globalization of technology and communication, and lastly, globalization of production. The first dimension of economic interconnectedness is demonstrated in the establishment of the World Trade Organization or WTO that eases trade among countries. World Trade Organization established in 1995 ensures that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. Another indicator is the emergence of China as the major supplier and exporter of manufactured goods that has affected the world economy. China-made products or parts are sent in the United States. To meet this demand, China creates more jobs for its citizens. The second dimension is evident in the liberalization of financial and capital markets. This is seen in cross-listing of shares on one or more foreign stock exchange, cross-hedging and diversification of portfolio, and round-the-clock trading worldwide. The third dimension emphasizes that the various transactions and interactivities that transpire instantly due to the internet and communication technology. Moreover, the fourth dimension is best illustrated by the existence of multinational corporations and transnational corporations. Here are some of the transnational companies and multinational companies in the Philippines. The most fitting definition of economic globalization is that of Zentes. It says making the world economy an organic system by extending transnational economic processes and relations to more and more countries and by deepening the economic interdependencies among them. This implies that the world economy is no longer controlled by the nation states, but it must be seen from a global context, the reliance and integration of world economies. There are different views on who or what the actors are that facilitate economic globalization. On one hand, some scholars believe that it is still nation-state but of different levels. Boyers and Draschi state that the role of nation-state as manager of national economy is being redefined by globalization. Brody support it by calling the government as the midwives of globalization, meaning that the nation-state are still relevant despite assuming a global perspective and act as mediators between the effects of globalization and the national economy. Some experts claim that the actors are now the Global Discussion Corporation. Omei argues that the nation-state has ceased to exist as the primary economic organization unit in the global market. For instance, Filipino consumers prefer to consume and avail of global products and services like H&M, Uniqlo, Accenture, Amazon, Alibaba, and FedEx. Rich posits that national products, technologies, corporations, and industries become obsolete as a result of transforming the national economy into a global one. San Miguel Corporation and Jollibee Foods Corporation are good illustration of this effect. International Monetary System or IMS, established to be one of actors that facilitate economic globalization, refers to internationally agreed rules, conventions, and institution of facilitating international trade, investments, and flow of capital among nation-states. Here are the three global IMS: the gold standard, Bretton Woods system, and lastly, the European Monetary System. Here are two financial institutions. First is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, now known as World Bank, responsible for post-war reconstruction, and International Monetary Fund aims to promote international financial cooperation and strengthen international trade. For Benzes, economic globalization fosters universal economic growth and development. Globalization allows a worldwide distribution of incomes. For instance, Australia cannot provide all the raw materials they need for certain product or services, so it needs other states to produce or provide these materials. Economic globalization reduces poverty. As foreign countries are in need of workforce and human capital, Filipino nurses become overseas workers. They go to Europe and other foreign countries to support their families in the Philippines. Globalization creates mutual dependence between developing and developed countries. Some developing countries rely on developed countries for employment and income, while the latter relies on the former for raw materials and services like labor. Some observers of economic globalization believe that it divides the world further. Number 1. Exploitation of goods and services. One might observe that the source of goods and services are exploited. Economically, poor nation-states depend on industrialized countries for employment and income. Thus, industrialized countries compensate their labor with cheap costs. Number 2. Economic globalization does not benefit all nations. There is an uneven experience among nations. Workers in transnational cooperation are paid less compared to their counterparts in the company's home countries. This shows how cheap labor is in the Philippines. Number 3. Capitalism created the different levels of wages in the economic arena of world system. It further divides the world for it leads to inequality according to expertise, experience, and skills. Conclusion. Economic globalization affects all nations and citizens through the increasing integration of economies around the borderless world. Its important players are the nation-states, global corporations, and the international monetary system. Do some people believe that economic globalization brings unity of all economic movements? Others believe that the globalization further the separation among the nation-state around the world. And that would be all. Thank you.